part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Okay, so this may be one of my favorite episodes I've ever recorded. It's also one of the longest. This is a long podcast, almost 2 hours long, and let me tell you, it's a fascinating listen. Mark, the chemist and geoscientist, is absolutely brilliant. He's a former worship pastor friend from my time as a worship pastor and student pastor in Central North Carolina. We worked right across the street from each other, and our stories have taken very completely different paths. I'm still in ministry full-time. Mark is not. But that's a podcast for a different day that Mark and I are going to record about our journeys in ministry. Look, I love Mark. I love his heart, his desire for truth, and his ability to bring people together to have incredible conversations. And this is one of those conversations. The third voice you'll hear in this podcast is Tim Fifer. I don't know Tim. I met Tim on this podcast. Tim has served as a youth pastor for the past couple years and has recently stepped down. He also hosts the podcast Unraveling with Tim and Pete. And Tim is one of the most articulate hosts I've ever talked with. He did a phenomenal job explaining some difficult concepts throughout this conversation. I left this conversation very excited, very fascinated, and also, if I'm being honest, a little slightly heartbroken for a lot of reasons. Heartbroken that our faith journey can be so difficult and painful. Heartbroken that deconstruction can leave a faith so naked and bare that there's nothing left. And we touch on all of that to some degree and extent in this conversation. But don't get me wrong, we talk a lot about space. And Mark takes us to school for about the first 30 minutes or so. I guarantee you will learn something. But then our convo switches over to faith implications, and it gets a lot of fun talking about deep space and faith and the potential of intelligent life. It gets a lot of fun. I sincerely hope you enjoy this episode. It's nothing like the sports pods I've hosted or uploaded on the feed previously. And as this podcast continues to grow, I'm going to be uploading more and more non-sports related content. And really just anything that's interesting to me, I want to talk about and bring people on that I know. I may talk movies, culture, leadership, just whatever really I find interesting that I love talking about. I'll have people on the pod just to hear their fascinating stories or their journeys, or simply to just share a laugh with people that I enjoy talking to. What I'm trying to say is I think you're going to like the variety you find on this podcast, and it will be interesting, thought-provoking, and it's going to be fun. And with that said, let's get to the show. Thank you for downloading the Chase Smith Podcast, proudly part of the Press Play Podcast Network. In this episode, I talk with chemist and geoscientist Mark Shortt and former student pastor Tim Fifer. We talk about deep space, faith, and the possibility of intelligent life. Let's get it!
Man, I have been anticipating this conversation so much because, I mean, Chase, I think you know some about me. We've been friends for a long time. We haven't spoken in depth or anything.
We haven't caught up. I feel like there's a lot to catch up on. Both of our lives look very, very different. The last time we really had to sit down and break bread, if I can use that verbiage here.
Broke bread. Oh my gosh, we are talking with Christians right now. It's great.
No, I said that tongue in cheek. Come on.
When was the last time you guys fellowshipped? When did you fellowship last?
Yeah, right. I'm just trying to extend the right hand of fellowship right now is what I'm trying.
Oh my gosh. I will hang up this phone so fast.
I love this.
You know, it's you have, you're married, you and Leslie, you have a kid.
We have 2 kids.
You have 2 kids. I'm not even up to speed with that. My goodness. Mm-hmm. Dude, that's wild, man. Are you going to have any more?
I love our kids.
That is such a nice way to put that.
Married 12 years. Mark, we still have the dog we had whenever we were friends in North Carolina. Willow is still kicking it.
Oh, that's so cool.
She's 11 years old, upstairs sleeping. She goes to bed at 1 p.m. I think. I don't know what she we got 2 kids. We got a 6-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, first grader and a toddler, and it's just been
wow.
It is every journey of life. You learn more about yourself and how much
at least in my experience, and everyone's different, right? But how much being married, I learned how crappy of a person I am, and how Leslie makes me a better person and expands my love. And the kids are the same way. They have different challenges and different growth perspectives and frustrations, but it's just my personal experience. I feel like I wouldn't be able to understand the type of love that I have without actually, experiencing marriage and a relationship that we, really try. Not that anyone doesn't, but it's just, I think marriage is hard work, and it takes effort, and it takes a lot of, it's hard. And parenthood is the same thing, but just different. So I just learn more about myself every day, and a lot of times it's things I don't like to learn about myself. But that's what's beautiful about it. I think
that's so cool, man. It's so cool just to see your face. Tommy, you don't got any kids, right? You're
Nope,
kid-free
just 2
for
cats.
now.
2 cats.
And I think your cat was climbing on you the last
Yes, absolutely.
last podcast
I'm going to put it at 60% that it happens again.
That's pretty good odds. It's pretty good. So we have this conversation has been on the peak of my brain because I've already recorded a couple of conversations this year. 2 days ago I recorded for a podcast, and I'm recording this upcoming weekend. But this is the conversation I've been wanting to have, because this is this conversation, this topic is this confluence of a few different ideas and principles that are kind of coming converging into a conversation that I never ever saw coming. And it's kind of revolving. I mean, I'm going to bring a lot, just so you guys right off the bat, and for those listening, I'm going to bring a lot of science into this conversation.
Good.
We're going to talk all about space and telescopes and the principles of telescopy and all of the stuff that comes with that.
I'm so glad you're bringing that, because I have absolutely nothing to contribute to that part. So I was really hoping that you were going to come in hot and heavy at the beginning, and then I'll be like, cool, thanks for that.
I'm so geeked out right now. If you guys have
wonderful
questions as we go, please interrupt me, because I tend to get a little excited, and I'll just want to keep talking about space and things like that.
Yeah, I love it. I love space. So this is a true story. I was flying back from
Mars,
the Virgin Islands about 10, 12 years ago. And we got rerouted. We had to go to Philly. Anyway, we had to take it was at night, and it was pitch black, 30,000 feet in the air. And I realized that this was the closest I'm going to be to being in outer space. And I was in an airplane. It was really dark, and I'd never really flown at 11:30 at night before. And it was just the most beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so I got so excited. I stood up, they're passing out blankets and little pillows in this airplane, wanting people to sleep. I stood up and I went to one of the airline hostesses. What are they called?
Stewardess?
Flight attendant?
Flight attendant, yes, thank you. And I said, look, this is a really dumb question, but do you guys have a moonroof I could just look straight up at? I was just so, because I love space too. And I was just if I don't ask, it was a really dumb question, but I love it. And I can't wait to hear someone who loves the science side.
Well, those
planes.
I'm
gonna geek out.
Those planes have those, in the school buses, they have the push up, those planes have those, man. You just got to push really hard and it just pops up, and and you can look at the stars.
That was my chance.
So we have, so you guys obviously have heard of, the Hubble Space Telescope. That was kind of the predecessor of the new telescope that just launched on. I don't know if you guys know any of this stuff, so I'm going to pretend like you don't.
Pretend like we don't.
I know nothing.
I'm going to be Googling everything as you talk about it. So
This
will be great. No.
So the Hubble Space Telescope was launched, and this is all off the top of my head. So Tommy, correct me as I go if I need to be. I like corrections in real time. I would say that my Google memory is like 90% fidelity, which is pretty good. So
that's pretty good.
Hubble was launched, I believe it was like April 24th, 1990. And so it's like 30, like just over 30 years ago. It was 92. It's just over 30, it was 1990. So it's been 32 years ago. It was originally only planned to be in space for like 15 years. And they had a few ideas, few options for what it was going to be. The first 3 years, the scientists at NASA did a single math calculation wrong on one of the lenses, and for 3 years Hubble was blurry. And it was like this huge embarrassment to all of NASA and everything. And so they had to send a crewed mission up there to change out a lens, and it totally fixed everything. But for 3 years, they spent, $500 million to build this school bus sized telescope to go up and, orbit around Earth, and they couldn't see anything.
I think every science classroom in our elementary school, United States, had a picture of the Hubble telescope.
Of the Hubble, yeah.
Yeah.
It's but as soon as it got fixed, and the way that Hubble works, is it's kind of like open platform, and a lot of people don't know this. But if you're a scientist, if you're an astrologer, like an astrologist, astronomer, you can apply to use the Hubble Space Telescope for whatever you want to use it for. And so as long as the manifest is empty, you can apply and go use as long as you have the right interface with the computer and you understand it, you can point it wherever you want in the sky, and it'll for the length of however long your application is. And there was a scientist in 1995, and this is really when everything changed. So the very first images were of Saturn and of Mars. They were trying to get images of the auroras over Saturn on the poles of Saturn. It got some beautiful, beautiful images. And then this scientist pointed Hubble at this pretty much like a blank space in the sky, and it's kind of like just outside of Ursa Major, like the Big Dipper, and it's just there's nothing there, which was a new idea for Hubble, because typically when you are applying for Hubble, you have an idea. Like, I have this star system, I'm going to go in and look at this. Well, this scientist went in and was like, yeah, we're going to look at nothing. And it was this new concept and this new idea. And so a lot of his peers thought he was kind of crazy for wasting all of this time to go in and look at nothing. And when they pointed the Hubble Space Telescope at this point of nothing, ended up calling it the Hubble Deep Field. It revealed like 100 million points of light within this space of nothing, because they pointed it there for 10 days. I believe they took some 300 still images in different wavelengths. I think there was 5 different sensors on Hubble, and so it's photographing in ultraviolet light and then all the way down through the main arc of visible light, and then just touches infrared. So it kind of scans all of those things. So it's looking at all of these things, and about 100 million different sources of light, and they're saying all of those are galaxies, and they're different. It's galaxies at different stages of formation. So it kind of showed the history not only of the galaxies, but of the formation of the universe and of early galaxies and how they were misshapen. And it was really, really interesting. And they were like, what if this is just a fluke? We found one point in the sky that was just weird. So then they pointed the telescope south. So that was pointing basically straight north, in relation to the Earth.
Okay, yeah, I had a question. Are there cardinal directions in space? Seems like another dumb question, but I just don't know.
Like, what's the frame of reference? How do you determine what direction?
I guess Earth would be.
Well, any given frame of reference can be the frame of reference, typically for Earth and for us when we are looking at anything celestial. The Earth is the frame of reference. So if you are in space looking, you reference back to Earth and then go north. So
everything revolves around the Earth. We heard it here on Mark Explains podcast.
That would be called
Mark Science right there.
A geocentric. That would be called a geocentric frame of reference. When you're looking at celestial objects, that is the truth. What we don't. It's not a. it's a heliocentric model of the solar system now.
I'm just knowing where our conversation is potentially going. I'm going to like put a little bookmark on that exact point because I think that's what I want to talk about. One of the things, but keep sciencing. Keep going, Mark.
Yeah, this is great, Mark.
You're funny.
I love
it. Yeah, this is fun. So they pointed the telescope south and into a tiny little patch of nowhere off the South Pole. And the reason they do the north and the south is because the Hubble Space Telescope is tidally locked at about 390 miles out. So that means it orbits more or less at the equator, and so it can't point at anything to where if the Earth would be in its view at certain points during its orbit, because it orbits the Earth about every 90 minutes or so. So if it's pointing at something, and then the Earth comes in the point of view, it can't do that. So it had to go either north or south, so that way it could point at that object during the entire orbit. So they picked a spot north, and then they picked a spot south, and both spots had over 100 million sources of light in these images, which is it was hard for the scientists to grab on at first. To kind of grab at the gravity of these images, because it changed all of astronomy. It changed everything, because then all of a sudden we have these a chronological diagram of the history of the universe in one image, because the further they look, the older the celestial object. And it was all in one photograph. It was just wild.
So how far in the past, like how far out were these? Like how many light years are we talking about?
Well, the original, the one that went north was like 12.2 billion years, was the furthest source of light. But the one that went south was 13.4. But it's what Hubble also did was it also showed that the expansion of the universe is accelerating as it goes. So we know Einsteinian relativity, and Einsteinian
relativity. I don't know if we know it, but continue.
We collectively, the ubiquitous we, like we understand that Einsteinian relativity. When it stretches space, it also stretches light. And so there's this term called red shifting. And a source of light that is super far away, and I mean like talking like celestially, like on the terms of across the universe, 12 or 13 billion light years away, that light will begin to shift. And if it started as like a yellow, it'll begin to shift, and then over a certain amount of time, it'll turn orange and then red, and then it'll keep going. And then it'll eventually go into infrared, IR. And for our eyes and for Hubble's view, that object will disappear. Even though it's shining yellow or even white, for our view, it'll disappear. So if something is far enough away in our galaxy or in our universe, it's, for all intents and purposes, to this point, it has been invisible. We can't see it.
So you mentioned like one of the directions they were able to see 13.4 billion light years away. Is that what they're using to say like the universe is 13.4 billion years old?
Well, it's the calculation is 13.77, and okay. and that is due to the GMAP probes. That's a whole nother conversation. That was what was.
So that's
used.
not using these images to determine that. That's something else.
Yeah, it was something else, but it was also imaging. But it's not imaging like you think.
Yeah. I was curious because, like you're saying, there could be stuff that's further away that the light is not hitting us anymore.
Could be. But we know probably. So, like, I'm going to say all of these things are going to be in very loose terms, like
sure,
could be or probably, because when we see at 12 billion light years away, the galaxies were very adolescent in their formation. They didn't look spirally like the beautiful spiral formations that we see. Like the Andromeda galaxy is this beautiful spiral. The ones that were super far away, they're kind of like clustered in gas, just clumps. They don't look real pretty, and that's because that's an early formation of a galaxy. And so, if all of them in the in the photo, if all of them at that distance looked like that, then we can assume that that was probably a starting point or near the starting point, instead of having like a mix. If there was a mix of some early and some later ones, some formed ones, you can be like, well, probably if there's formed ones, it'll go back even further. But since there weren't, maybe it was only another billion years before that, or maybe 500 million years. It's hard to know, but it's a good guess at that point.
Okay.
So, Chase, you're shaking your head.
I love this. No, I'm shaking on my head because I just keep going, man. I feel like this is like a PBS documentary, and I'm just like, as you're talking, I'm seeing these images as you're explaining them, and I'm just completely sober, music? I promise.
I feel like this documentary needs background music.
I'll put it in. Don't worry.
Okay.
I wish we had your...
No, I want it now.
Loving this right now.
I want my experience to be the documentary. Like, I need you to pipe it in, is what I'm saying.
Done. I got it. So if you're listening to this the first time and you've never seen Hubble Deep Space, go right now, Google Hubble Deep Space images. Tom is literally he's doing it right now.
I am
Chase, are you doing it too? Do it. Search Hubble Deep Space. Now, this is 1995 was when this came out. These are the images that changed astronomy forever. This shifted our view, our understanding of the universe. This was groundbreaking. And the reason why is because this gave us, it was all, up to this point, it was all, lowercase theoretical. It was all, educated guesses on what we think is going on. We had a lot of really, really smart individuals, but now we have photos, we have pictures, and this changes everything. And I'm sure if you're looking at those photos, every little speck of light is not a star, it's a galaxy.
This is what it looks like.
That's wild.
Remember those light brights from the 80s and 90s that start with a black sheet of paper?
Yep.
And if you're driving or you're jogging or working out and you can't do this, it looks like you take a light bright black sheet of paper and someone put these green, orange, red, white, varying sizes of circles in this black sheet of paper. Blue. I mean, that's what it looks like. There's no pattern. There's no word like light bright or anything, but it's what it looks like.
Yeah,
and
it really looks like. Well, and also the different colors are indicative of that red shifting that we were talking before. So if there's a blue, if there's a blue hue to a galaxy that is out there, over time in space, it'll start to shift into the green and then the yellow and into the red and so forth.
I just realized they might have to Google light bright. You may need to change my reference.
I think that's good that if it's blue light out in space, it wouldn't be so, because I get way too much blue light, in my eyes, especially at night. So that's really good that it kind of chills out and gets more orange before it gets here.
Yep, it's the first.
I get a lot better sleep when the galaxies that are blue light just kind of calm down.
Well, it's
a
the
little
first
bit,
light to shift away. So you're welcome, universe. For shifting that away.
Thanks.
Side note here, you just said, kind of the backdrop to the universe is black with all these little spots. There's a little bit of some celestial knowledge here. For the first, I want to say 100,000 years of the universe, so the first blip, after the first rapid expansion, the universe was so hot and temperature. There's something called black body radiation, which is temperature. The temperature of something is going to glow in correlation to the light of it is going to glow in correlation to the temperature of what it is. And we know that the temperature had to be a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. And so for the first 100,000 years or so, the universe, the background color of the universe was orange, because it was so hot for so long. And then that heat dispersed and it turned red, and the universe was red for a while. And then it dispersed into infrared, and now it's just black because the heat has dispersed into clouds of dust and now galaxies.
Hey, Mark, can you remind people what it is you do? Because I think that's important, that this isn't just
some guy.
Right. We didn't find Mark at the corner of the interstate off ramp and pick him up.
Well, I'm
I know this is a passion project, but there Like there's merit to your genius, and I want people to hear that.
Well, I'm a chemist by trade and a geoscientist and a prospecting PhD student at Michigan State for
I did not know that.
for high energy particle physics. So yes,
Mark. Okay.
So science is
That's awesome.
in every part of my life.
So this is like a free graduate level lecture. We just
I would call this is undergraduate. This is super low stuff. Yeah, this is every day.
Let's try to help our listeners out here, man.
What Mark is saying, Chase, is that you and I are dumb because we are overwhelmed by this undergrad lecture.
Right. Whoa, I got my PhD in physics tonight. No, dude, this is like 100 level stuff. Come on, man.
Yep, 101.
This is
analogies.
fun
What do you think you are?
This is really, really fun stuff. So the reason why I'm leading into all of that and talking about the Hubble is how much the Hubble changed our life. Like every bit of our understanding of the universe changed dramatically overnight in the mid 1990s. So now we fast forward 25 years and we are in 2020 and it's still taking images. I think it took like 1.3 million images over the course of its life. And then the past 10 years, scientists are like, you know what? We think we can look further into the universe if we can design a telescope that looks in the infrared spectrum. And the reason why that's interesting is because there's cosmic dust. Like if you've seen those nebula pictures of like the crazy colors of the clouds in the universe and stuff, those are nebulas, which is like cosmic dust that's reflecting.
I see them now in my mind's eye, Mark. Thank you.
The Crab Nebula is one of my favorite. Is one of my favorite nebulas. I have a favorite nebula. I don't know. You guys should have a favorite nebula. You should go and find your.
My favorite is the daughter of Thanos. It's my favorite nebula.
Oh God. I don't know how to respond to that appropriately.
I'm just here to make bad jokes. Continue, Mark.
You know, as far as icebreakers go, I've never thought about asking people their favorite nebula. I'm going to add that to the rotation.
It's so good.
Welcome to the new small group. Tell us your name and your favorite nebula.
Nebula. So like the reason why that's important is because infrared light travels through that dust. So we can see further into the cosmos. We can see further into planetary systems. We can see into a star, actually, because of all of the radiation. It's coming out of different wavelengths. So the scientists were like, we should create an entire telescope that only looks in deep infrared. And so the idea of the James Webb Space Telescope came about 10 years ago. And also, if you think the size, the bigger the reflecting mirror, the main mirror, the bigger the mirror, the better the images. I believe Hubble is like 2.4 meters in size, and this one is like 6.7. So it's like 3 times the size. The main mirror, I think like some statistics on it are something like it's made of beryllium covered in a thin sheet of gold, and that's in order to protect it.
Well, listen, man, it's all in how you use it. Size, I think, is just a number. It's all a matter of how you use it. You can have the biggest lens, but if you don't know how to use it right, then...
Oh, my God. Nice. Such a cheesy joke. Such a cheesy joke. It matters in science, Chase, and in telescopy, okay? It's the only thing where size does matter, and in everything else it doesn't, apparently.
Good.
I guess that makes sense.
Yes. It's... So this telescope is huge, and also it's going to go into a much different place in our orbit, in the orbit around Earth. So you got to think like Hubble just circumvents the Earth every 90 minutes. It orbits around like 330 million miles out, and or 330 miles out. This James Webb Space Telescope is going to be really, really far, like 900. So it's going to be way out there, 900 miles out, and it's at a place called the Lagrange point 2, which, if you think about like Earth has gravity and the moon has gravity and the sun has gravity, there's a certain point between the 3 of those celestial objects where they're going to pull equally. Like there's a point in space where all 3 of them the pole will be equal. And so that's called a Lagrange point. And if you can place an object at that point, then it won't have to do many maneuvers in order to be stable. And so the idea is to get it out to the Lagrange point 2, and the orbit around the sun, it kind of looks like a star as it goes around, because it has to stay in that, because as the moon orbits and the earth orbits and the sun stays center, it's this wild star-shaped orbit, that is
so cool.
It's wild. It's so cool. But because of that stability, it is able to stay fixated on a spot for like 100 days, which is something that the Hubble can't really do.
Want to take a quick break to tell you about our good friends at Shortt.com. Shortt.com offers the very best t-shirt frames on the market. It's as simple as that. It's so good, some call it art for your shirt. You know, shirt art. Shortt. Shortt.com is perfect for that shirt folded in the back of your drawer that is too sentimental to donate or throw away. Purchase one of these incredible t-shirt frames. They're ready to hang and display that shirt with pride. Shortt's foam inserts and high-quality frames prevent you from having to cut your shirt and will keep your memory safe and beautiful for years to come. It comes fully assembled with turn buttons, real glass sealed in place for safe shirt framing, and 2 sawtooth hangers nailed to the back of the frame so you can mount your piece of Shortt either horizontally or vertically. Shortt acts as a great decoration for your home, retail store, office, bar, restaurant, school, gym, shop, man cave, and even studios. It's super simple and easy to set up. Look, I love this product so much. I have 5 of them. I have 5 pieces of Shortt in my office and in my office at the church. I'm telling you, they are fantastic. And partnering with us, now they can offer the very best prices on the very best t-shirt frames. Only for the Chase Smith podcast listeners, you can use promo code CHASE to save $5 off of an order of their original 11x14 black frame. Limit 1 per customer, and the offer is good through the rest of February. Again, that promo code is CHASE at checkout to save $5. Go to Shortt.com today to begin your order.
Hey everyone, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. Backed by popular demand, I'm excited to let you know that new episodes of the Hyman Podcast will drop every other Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're going to continue the conversations we started last season and keep having those hard conversations. There is so much in store for you this season, and I'm excited to share it with you. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single moment. The Hyman Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Yeah.
So,
this is amazing.
What does this all mean? Like, why in the world are we talking about all this space stuff? Because
I'm not talking about, I'm just listening. This is fascinating.
Well,
I could just keep listening.
The reason why I pulled you 2 incredible humans on this podcast, and I was like, yo, we need to talk about this today. And the reason why is because NASA, right before Christmas, hired 24 theologians, which it has never done before.
Whoa.
NASA hired 24 theologians to conduct long-term research on how humanity will respond if it were to come in contact with intelligent life.
Interesting.
Now, NASA is not known for hiring theologians ever because they are the National Aeronautic and Space Administration. They're not really known for their connection with theology. And they went and hired theologians. And I made a prediction right before this happened that through the James Webb Space Telescope, we are going to discover intelligent life this year. Now, it'll be proof. And actually, like a lot of people think, oh, we're going to find aliens. That's not what my prediction will be. I believe through the James Webb Space Telescope, that is hard to say, I believe because it has the ability to search exoplanets for different compositions of star systems that are very far away, like 15,000 light years away, and which is really, really, really cool.
So what's new about this? Like that we're learning about it, or
we don't know. Like we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what we're going to find. But I think NASA actually. So I'm going to go into the speculative side of this, is I think NASA knows what we're going to find, and they are preparing in some capacity for this stuff to unfold. Now, I am open to the idea that NASA didn't hire that. If that ends up being fake news, then honestly, like I didn't truly fact check that. I had a news source. I had a NASA source actually, which is why I thought that was legitimate information. It might not be, but the idea here is I made a prediction that we are going to find proof of intelligent life in this year, and it's going to be due to James Webb Space Telescope. Now, that proof of intelligent life is not going to be like we're going to go find aliens. That's not what I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be something like we are going to discover proof of a one world extinction event. And it'll be like we find either like galactic structures or even a one world planet like our own that has gone through a destruction of some kind, a great filter or a small dwarf star that has expanded and kind of burned it up, but there is evidence of life previously. That is what I believe we're going to find.
That would be intense.
I think it's going to be a will. That will be intense. And the reason why I say this is, I mean, you have to understand how incredibly powerful the James Webb Space Telescope is. Like it picks up heat signatures. If you were to place the James Webb on the surface of the Earth, how sensitive that telescope is, it could pick up the heat signature of a bumblebee if it was on the moon. To give you an idea of the level.
That's pretty good.
And the moon is about 280,000 miles away. So like this is incredibly powerful. And so the idea here is we are looking into the past, but we're also, it's also going to look further than ever before. So it's gonna be able to see these really, really, really early, all the way to like 200 million years after the initial expansion. So like 13.6 billion years back, but then look with clarity because it's something we can't do right now. And there's a few other things that can do. So we'll be able to see the origins much, much more clearly. But really the exciting part is the ability to search exoplanets in that habitual zone.
Well, I think this is really interesting because this comes on the heels of the Pentagon or Navy or other military
the UFO
intelligence
stuff?
Yeah, in 2021, in the middle of quarantine, they're just like,
"Oh yeah,
hey, I know you guys haven't left the house in like in 12 months, but we're going to declassify a bunch of things we don't know anything about, and here are some videos of things that we don't know where they are, or where they came from, or where they went. So here you go. We'll see you guys later." And so it is kind of, you do kind of scratch your head and start to. It's easy to ask yourself, what else do they know that we don't know that they are, trying to get ahead of before we know what they know?
Right.
I was all over that declassification.
Dude,
I didn't
that
check
stuff
every
was
file,
so interesting.
It really was. Yeah.
It was like every part of 7-year-old Mark came alive and was like, UFOs, they're real. And I just like,
yeah, it was files. All of a sudden, these like random interviews with people, like retired generals, were showing up on like the timeline and everywhere of what they saw and their experience. And it was exciting. I don't know if anyone remembers, if they're listening, what it was like June or July of 2021.
Yeah, the declassification.
It kind of had a nice little run, and then it was off to something else. But yeah, this isn't completely out of the zeitgeist of everyone. This isn't the first news of this, content either, because you hear it once. I feel like once you're kind of desensitized to something like this, like people aren't. It's not going to have as big of a shock, or whatever they do find. I don't know. I think.
Well, I think they bleed. I think they bleed you into the information. I think at first what they do is they kind of give it to you and you're like, that's ridiculous. And then some people make a documentary on it and they're a bunch of wackos, like the guy about the ancient aliens with the crazy hair. And, like they're a bunch of wackos. They kind of bleed you into it. And then over time it becomes a little more real and then a little more real. And then actual scientists start chiming in and be like, well, this is stuff that we're studying and it's, a little more realistic. I mean, like a lot of those people that are studying simulation theory and it's like actual scientists and you're like, oh, so the Matrix could be real, and it's like all of these things that are kind of beginning to come to the surface, which at first was, it was just a bunch of kooks. And it's almost like they're bleeding us into and like preparing the human mind, because I think if they were just to come out and say it, like with no prep, if they were just be like, oh, by the way, we're not alone in the universe, I think people would lose their damn minds. Like they would go.
Do you think
crazy.
That's why scientists aren't coming out? Is they're worried about the impact that it would have on the public?
No, I'm gonna say that real hard and strong. No, scientists don't care. Politicians might. The government might care how they respond. Scientists just want to study science and uncover.
Put out their info.
More science.
I think they want proof too. Like I would say probably the fact that there's not like definitive proof that they can say back up like whatever theory they have, I think is another kind of like thing that's withholding people from saying this is definitely what's out there.
Well, a lot of science is presenting the information given. Whether there's conclusive evidence or not, you're going to present the study that you did, and if it's inconclusive or not interesting, it just gets washed. And then a lot of stuff that as more evidence comes about, your correlation, it's called empiricism, like your level of confidence in that thing is correlated to the amount of evidence given. And if the evidence is overwhelming, then your confidence is overwhelming. And so like a lot of times scientists are just like, well, we're going to present the information and it just gets washed and nobody cares. So that's why it never makes it to the surface. That's why nobody ever hears anything. And then you have...
I guess I should have let the scientists answer that question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's good that you answer it though, because like this is the true reflection of like in a sense the dissonance between somebody who studies and then the American eye. And it's good that we have this conversation because there's a disconnect there also. So it's like we are now approaching, and honestly, the question I have, and I'm probably going to title the episode something like this, is what do you guys think? And I'll start with you, Tommy. Like, what do you think if NASA came down the hill and made a statement, and the government would grab onto it real fast and probably twist it, and then Fox News would grab it, and then CNN would grab it and make their own headlines for it? Well, what do you think would be the human response, first in America and then worldwide? How do you think we would respond if they were like, we have definitive evidence that we are confident in saying we are not alone in this universe, and probably we are one of hundreds?
Well,
what would you do?
So how would people respond? Is that the question? Like, how would people in
what would
general?
be the response of humanity, like in our nation? What do you think it would turn political?
Our nation has a really strong track record of responding well to scientific information in the 2020s so far. This decade, we've been off to a real good start of like taking scientists very seriously and believing them and not comparing them with our pseudo religion. So that I think that bodes well for us, Mark. I think we might really digest this, really process it, demonstrate a whole lot of trust, allow ourselves to be expanded and to be willing to be wrong about what we thought was true. We'll really, examine our biases and why we might have a commitment to. Oh, I'm committed to the bit because
he's committed to the bit.
No, I mean, obviously the sarcasm is there. I think some of the I didn't know exactly what the question was going to be. You gave us a little bit of it before we jumped into this. I've been thinking about it a little bit, and I've been thinking of it through a lot of different angles, like the historical angle. How have people responded to, the world being bigger than Europe? And, like how, if we're from a faith perspective, like, Some folks did that well. Other parts of the church like created the doctrine of discovery, and that's a paradigm that we tend to follow, right? So I've been thinking through that, but the way you asked the question there, some of that is just like really basic, like what do we do with new information? How well are we able to bring in any kind of new information, and what are the filters that new discoveries and information goes through? And I made the joke about, obviously relating to COVID and things like that, but I do think that would be a pretty solid indicator of what a lot of people would do with this kind of information. And before I sound like I'm being critical, like, oh, what all those dumb people would do, I think it's what we as humans do. It's very hard for us to, unless we have a paradigm that allows us to bring in new information, it's a flexible paradigm, it's just really hard to do that. So by and large, oversimplifying, but like, I think we would struggle to actually incorporate that new information as a whole.
I think we're on a precipice here. I mean, because if you think back, everyone thought that the Earth was flat, right? And
I was going to use that example.
Well, see,
too,
and then Pythagoras came along and showed through geometry that was incorrect. And then we all thought that it was geocentric, right? We had a geocentric model of the universe, and Copernicus and Galileo kind of showed through complex math, turned simple, that it's actually the sun. And so and that changed. I mean, people were up in arms and angry, the scientific community, they were outcast. And this is, I feel like we're approaching, if this comes about, we're approaching that same level of that order of magnitude, to where this it's going to change everything all over again.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, there's so many different ways that I think people could respond. So there's individual people, would they do that? If you're going to go the Pythagoras and Galileo and Copernicus, all those people, the church was on record, saying that this person was a heretic, and so there might be a good number of religious folks that would go against all that information. I mean, we have efforts in our government in the United States trying to make schools not learn about the history of racism. So I'm sure there would be efforts for kids to not learn about this information. I mean, I could see all that kind of stuff happening. So, but using those historical examples, there may be resistance for a long time, but that would be where the history is actually hopeful for us to say that, we got there.
Chase,
it took a few generations, but we got there.
Well, I was gonna Chase. What would you tell first Wednesday back? This information is released Monday, and people are going nuts. What are you telling your kids Wednesday?
I'm assuming you're talking about at church.
Yeah,
and I'm talking about students at church. We would. So I think this is part of a bigger conversation about deconstruction, and how we're in this. And I'm not answering your question, Mark, because I don't know what I would say.
Nice,
but I think
I want you to
the conversation, the conversation with those students, I would probably steer towards it being okay for them to ask questions, and would be okay for them to, and it's natural for your faith worldview to be expanded this way. And what are fundamental, elemental, core values of your faith? Is it that there are other people, other organisms, other life? Is it that Earth isn't 7 days old? Are those things really foundational in your belief in God?
Yeah.
And I think that's where I would point the discussion, because I think that not only speaks to this question, Mark, but a lot of other questions that I think as you walk in your faith journey, you're going to have to wrestle with hard questions that maybe aren't hey, there's life, what do you think about that? But other questions about brokenness and how the world is just so violent, and how the world is unfair, and how people are awful people and they have the coolest stuff and the best life and they just seem like nothing's wrong, and how I think it speaks to other questions that speak to our faith that you can kind of lean into. And I think I think what we're seeing worldwide is just this whole age of deconstruction, how the whole, like it, and I think it just would be almost the lighthouse or the keystone or the like final piece to this collective deconstruction that I think a lot of us have gone through and are experiencing, that I would say the church has probably wrestled with and probably lost up to this point, of how to deal with young adults and adults who are deconstructing their faith and not giving them a safe space. So I think, Mark, to answer your question, I got there. I would probably lean into some of these questions that it asks and have a conversation about, okay, what do we believe? What is our faith? And do questions like, so there's life, however many light years away, is that okay? And I would probably encourage them that it is a healthy question, that it's okay to ask those questions, and just kind of not give any definitive answer, but just make sure they know it's a safe place to ask hard questions. That's where I would start. 48 hours into the discovery, probably start there.
And Chase, to that point, asking the question like, hey, is it okay to you if there's life, so many, light years away? And if they say like, no, it's not, then it's well, why isn't it? And like, totally the questions is 1,000% the right way. And I think where you went as far as like, whether we're talking about faith deconstruction things, whether we're talking about historical discoveries, right? I mean, so there's the thing of like, they're not sure that all 13 Pauline epistles were written by Paul exactly. And that is the same conversation of like, okay, what is the foundation of your faith? For a lot of people, that's enough to be like, this whole thing is BS. And like, and often those are the environments where they were raised with the thought of like, it has to be this way, right? If you're brought up in the fundamentalist, very small, this is exactly how it is and you can't question it, those are going to be the spaces where then people are going to freak out, in either direction, either the nope, resist the science, resist everything, or thinking that this is going to blow everything up. And so I think, if NASA did work with Princeton to develop theologians, probably a lot of that work would be just around like the work of spirituality, of like, how do we help people engage with really big, complicated things within their faith? And maybe back to one of the questions I think you were kind of thinking of, Mark, like what paradigm do we have? Is it this exact discovery that opens up a new paradigm, or is it this discovery? I think everyone has a discovery that they make or they learn about that opens up their paradigm in some way. It's a question of what does it open up into, right?
I'll tell you what I'll be very mindful of would be to not discredit a credible scientific source. And something that I've been conscious of the past 2 years is when I've been given space and an opportunity to credibilize, if that's even a word, I'm making it a word, to credibilize a lot of medical information that's been released and some of the science that we've been seeing. I've been very conscious to do that.
Super important for a faith leader to model trusting of scientific authorities. Yes, 1,000%.
I agree.
So my natural next question would be, there was a large discovery in the...
Well, can I pause you for 1 second there? Because I think a part of my answer, I'm still in that, what he taught the students Wednesday night, 48 hours. I would hope that my local church would have gathered together the leaders and had some type of formal church position of where it's at, so that I'm not just fielding questions and giving answers off the top of my head, even though I feel like I could. I also believe that if I'm an employer at a church and working for a church, whether it's a denomination or a church leadership, that I echo that the best that I can. And so if there is this like earth-shattering, like future-shaping discovery that happens on a Monday, and we have 2 days to prepare for, hey, you're going to be with students, you're going to have parents asking students what you talked about, that they're not only would they trust me to have that conversation, but there would be some church authority official statement that I would be able to share as well and help with that discussion. So I think it's both.
Well, I respect that. I respect that position a lot, Chase. Every part of me pushes back against that, just as a human and as an 8 on the Enneagram. Like, I absolutely hate the idea that somebody else is going to give me my opinion on something. But I fully understand and respect that that stance that you have because of the position that you're in. And if I was an employer somewhere, I probably would have to at least value that concept and that idea. Thankfully I'm not in that position. So if it comes out, I'm just like, screw you guys. I'm gonna go have my own opinion. Come with me, and we're gonna start a new religion. And
right.
So some of me would be really curious, like what, and this is all hypothetical, of course, but like what would you be hoping would be the content of that statement from the church? Would it be like straight up we believe statements about that, or would it be like,
well, the church is really the church is really good at saying we believe this, we believe that.
So that's exactly like, so this would be an environment where like, so like right in COVID, as an unfolding public health crisis. Like, my stance as a pastor, I was not going to give any, like, this is what I believe, or this is what we believe about COVID. What the fuck? None of us know anything about this. Like, no one can speak about this with authority. And so what I was doing was to say, this is what we are going to do. This is, it was, that was certainly in a crisis of like, how to proceed about this. I could see you also like laying out, as a community of faith, like, this is how we are going to approach these questions. We're going to approach these questions with curiosity. We're going to approach these questions with trust. We're going to approach these questions with, a sense of wonder. We are Christians. We believe in God. We do believe in a creator. And if our discovery of the cosmos leads us to thinking that there's more beyond this, we will wrestle with this. Personally, I would be much more comfortable with a church coming out with that kind of statement. If I saw a church coming out with a statement that was like, this is what we believe about the data, I'm going to be like, yo, the scientists haven't even agreed what the information says yet. Like, how on earth are a bunch of, church board members going to hammer out a statement in a, 90-minute meeting on a Wednesday night,
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think I would just hope that I would have a voice and a seat at the table in that kind of direction that the church wants to go. I think if I'm in a position of leadership at a church, it doesn't make and I'm there at the church every day and I'm in the weeds, it doesn't make sense for a banker to have a lot of theological input into the direction of, but no, like, exactly right. I think like a definitive statement wouldn't be the wisest thing, but some type of general direction and
leadership for the community, 100%.
Yeah. So sorry, Mark, I had to add that kind of
you're totally good. So
extra.
So scientists already came out,
because now I kind of want it to happen, and I want to I love those questions. So sorry, continue.
No, I'm going to ask. I have like 6 more. Just be ready.
Good.
The scientists have already come out with incredible discoveries proving that the age of the Earth, and collectively, and I will only speak for me because I don't know either of your views on any of this, but like collectively, the church as a whole that I was raised in rejected all of the stance of evolution in every capacity. Now we are approaching the precipice of that all over again. And do you think the church will be just as resistant to more evidence proving the age of the universe that will support that versus the age of the literal interpretation of the Bible?
I would say that the way that the churches have responded to the age of the universe would be a pretty good predictor for how they might respond to this new information.
Probably.
Sure, there'd be outliers. There'd be people who would, okay, I can now accept that the Earth isn't 6 days old, but I draw the line at aliens. Like you'd have some of those folks. But like, some of this gets at the question of like, not to get way too meta here, but like, what even is theology? Like, what is theological leadership? What is the role of a church to speak about the reality of things? Like, what are you doing when you are making claims theologically? I think some people have conflated, certainly the more fundamentalist camps have conflated theology to being this, like, it is science, like theology is able to make scientific claims, whereas I think there's another approach to theology, certainly mine. I never have belonged to a church that would formally make a statement of 6 days. I would say that we hold to a tradition that tells the story of 6 days, that communicates who God is and who we are as people. And there's a beautiful poetry in that poem that talks about the creation of the world in 7 days, etc. But like, all that to say, it's a question of like, what even are we doing? And like, as a pastor, I was a theologian, and some of it's almost like a scope of practice question. Like, if someone asks me a question about the age of the universe, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I don't know. That sounds like a good question for an astrophysicist. I can talk about like, how might we respond to a world that seems infinite to us? Like, and ask really good questions of people of like, how does that, impact you and your sense of yourself or the world or your faith, with this information, and walk with people in that way. But some of it does get back to just a question of like, what even are we doing, in a faith environment, at least.
What
right?
is
this? What are we doing? Yeah.
I always try to caution, like, I don't speak on behalf of the church, so I'm not trying to like think that, oh, hey, I'm Chase, I think I know what the church is going to respond or do. I would say the churches that responded in a more cautious approach to COVID would probably be the ones that would ascribe to the church doesn't have to be 7 days old, and the churches that didn't think COVID was real or didn't have any mandates or didn't alter their programming would probably be the ones to first reject the other interpretations of Genesis.
Well, it's a big, so there's something called the false dichotomy fallacy.
And that's an overgeneralization, but I would say generally the odds would probably be that way.
I think you're right with that. But there's this fallacy called the false dichotomy fallacy, and it's a fallacy that presents only two options for something. Like, what's a great example? If we were to see American flags, a protest with American flags, immediately I'm like, oh, that's a bunch of racist people, and somebody be like, no, those are patriots, and it can either be one or another. When realistically, it's probably, it could be 1,000 things. You get these individuals that hold a belief system really close to their their ideas are held close to their value system. And if their ideas begin to crumble, then they feel like the value of themselves are crumbling. And if their ideals and belief systems are all in one big basket, and in that basket you have not only Jesus died for our sins, and you have that he is coming back for us, and that also the creation of the earth is 6,000 years old, and it happened in 7 days.
Can we flesh this out some more? Because there's more to that. Not only it's all that, but it's if you're a Christian, you have to be Republican. It's if
right.
I'm serious.
I'm
serious.
I
This
know.
Is like
I laugh.
80s, 90s.
I laugh
like
because
even,
it strikes a chord. I only yes, but you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. So like
and it's you can't cuss, drink, or like it's all of that wrapped up in one thing. You can't have one without everything
right.
else.
So if I present information that comes from really good and conclusive scientific studies, that and if you go down the scientific route, science does not care. Like it doesn't. Science doesn't care what your belief is. It doesn't care what your race is. Science, it's just data. That's all it is. It's just, hey, we uncovered data. Here's the data. Interpret it how you will. That's all. That's the foundation of science, and that's why I love it, because it really just doesn't care. And the data was showing, hey, or the Earth probably is a little bit older than we think it is initially, and also probably we're probably more connected with animals and plants than we think we are initially. And you get a person who holds everything in one big basket, and they also hold their ideals in correlation with their value system. And if one of those gets proven wrong by science, they have to reject all of science, because nothing can fall apart without the value of them falling apart.
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
identity. Yeah.
Their identity gets attacked. And so if you find your identity in a belief system and then the belief system is challenged, people think you're challenging their value system and who they are as a person. And that's the disconnect.
But they think it is on a subconscious level, right? That's the
it's
problem.
not active.
People,
it's not active.
If people were actually aware, like, oh, my heart rate is rising to this data, not because I'm thinking, but because I think this is an attack on me and my security and salvation and blah, blah, blah. If we could just make people aware of that, oh my gosh. But it's when people aren't aware that that's what's actually happening, where it can become a real problem. Part of this, like, it makes me think this is a conversation around not only like you said, like, what is the basket, and how big is that basket? It becomes a question of, to use a big word, epistemology, right? And I know you've done an episode on epistemology, is
twice,
that right?
Twice, actually.
Yeah. So, like, how do we learn what we learn, and how do we, incorporate that? And so that's why I think Chase and I keep using examples of, or you've mentioned, how did people respond to this scientific discovery? How did people respond to this historical discovery? Some of it is just like or how do people respond to COVID? It's a question of like how much of an anti-intellectualist thread is there in a particular faith community. That I think would be a major predictor around this conversation, right?
Yeah.
And I think there is a ton of value in examining responses to COVID. This is like a global, national, historical moment that it sounds right now in the moment cliche to keep using as an example and saying, well, COVID this, COVID that, but it is just an incredible case study in sociology and all the ologies.
Right.
Like we're experiencing, living through it right now. And so I think there's a ton of value in looking at how we've responded to this, how the church has responded, how we've responded, how it has created this false dichotomy of it's either true or not true. It's either vax or unvaxxed. It's either fake news or it's
alternative news.
This is the
alternative
best
facts.
Oh yeah.
This is the best case study, and it's not cliche because we're going to be studying it for a long time,
Yeah.
I believe. Until this discovery of alternate life that kind of changes.
Yeah.
that becomes the new kind of benchmark.
Well, I have a question for you then, Chase.
Yes, sir.
I'm projecting this information comes down the line and you have time to think about it. Does your faith change in any capacity? And if so, how?
It doesn't.
No.
My faith doesn't change.
No, zero.
No.
So God so loved the world. Does that love project onto aliens and other worlds?
Nope, all of them are screwed. That makes, you know what? That makes me believe in, I'm now a Calvinist, and I can draw the line that it's you know what? We've been getting this wrong, that like it's only some humans that God wanted to send to hell. No, God created the aliens for the purpose of going to hell. I will become a double predestinationist if we learn that this is true.
A double predestinationist. That's amazing.
Double.
Look, I don't know. Should it change my faith? I know that, and their revelation speaks to people and things that aren't human or things that we know in heaven, and so I'm cool with whatever. It's personally in my faith journey. It's not going to shake my faith.
Yeah,
I'm going to be excited to watch God reveal itself to. Maybe he already has. I don't know. But no, it does not shake my faith.
I was talking to a theologian last night, actually, on the phone, and I asked him. I said, "Do you think Jesus died for the sins of the aliens?" And he kind of went into a. Richard Rohr has he talks about cosmic Christ. And actually got a lot of backlash from the modern day church from that. But he was like, I would like to believe that if there is a creator, if there is, and if we can all just for a moment agree that there could be, and if there is a creator and somehow had their hand in the creation of not just humans but of all life, not only on the earth but in all worlds, and if that creator did love, that the love would extend not just beyond earth but to all creatures. And I thought that was a beautiful thought. I'm like, I feel like if there is a God and if God does love, that I feel like the love would be big enough to extend to little green aliens on.
So some of this is the question of like, what do we do with prior revelation and how do we incorporate prior revelation into our awareness? So to go back to the 6 days of creation example, a lot of the ways that whether we're talking about how creation came about, there's the ancient Near Eastern cosmology of like the kind of these bubbles, like these layers and the way that the sun worked and the way that the earth worked and the way that the heavens worked. And at one level, to understand what it is that like they're saying in a literal sense, you have to at least understand what that cosmological perspective is. However, I'm with you, Chase, that like my faith has come to a point where I don't need to have the scientific understanding of a 10th century BCE person in order to believe that this is revealing something about the nature of God and the nature of reality. And so being able to extrapolate like this faith tradition is revealing a benevolent creator who loves the creation, who would be willing to give up everything and adores everything that this creator has made. You can extrapolate that to say that this creator, yes, even the things that we are continuing to discover out in the cosmos, like if God is this way in this environment, this has revealed who God is. So what is like ultimately, what is the Bible? What is all of this stuff? What is Revelation? Is it meant to be revealing? This is Karl Barth right here. If we want to get super theological nerdy, like, is the Bible primarily a book of history? Is it primarily a book of religion? Is it primarily a book of morals? It has some of those things, but it is not primarily any of those things. It's primarily, the purpose is to reveal who God is. And if we can take that and extrapolate that into whatever it is that we're discovering. But that's when we're talking about, right? Like, what's the paradigm? What's the basket? What is it that we're understanding the faith to be? And I don't think, I think a lot of folks, would not say it the way that we're saying it, I guess,
Tom, what do you hope we find?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Like what would be the coolest thing in your brain? Be like, oh, if this was the discovery, like the Death Star, if they discovered the Death Star.
I hope it would be that C.S. Lewis was right and Paralandra and the space trilogy.
No.
What do you mean no?
Those books were terrible and the references were terrible. No, I'm just discrediting all of that. That was garbage. It was garbage writing from, it was garbage.
Stop it.
Chase, what?
You didn't find any value in that?
No, zero.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, I just went on a rabbit hole looking up the Greek word for earth in Acts 1 where it says, you shall, to Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth, and what that word is. So sorry, I missed the whole. Last I heard was Karl Barth, and then I thought I checked out. I checked myself out at Barth, and I said
the listener did too. So thanks for bringing us back. I appreciate it.
You're not talking about you're not talking about Matthew 28 when he was talking about to the end of the age. You're talking about to the ends of the earth.
This is and as he's ascending into heaven on the cloud,
Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria,
to the ends of the earth. Yep. What is that Greek word?
Well, that's the flat earth. It's to the edge of the earth.
Right, to the edge before you fall off.
Before you fall off. Yeah, the big ice cliff. I actually saw a meme today that said the earth is 70% water. So it's primarily water, and it's all not carbonated. So technically it's a flat earth. I was like, oh my God, that's a brilliant argument.
Oh man, you got me. You're right.
So
you guys have been right all along.
So what did you find, Chase, to the ends of the earth?
Looking like here, I don't know how I don't speak Greek. I didn't take Greek. So one great thing about being a youth ministry major at the Bible college I went to is you didn't have to take Greek.
Yeah.
So I actually was able to get my master's in youth ministry without taking Greek too. So I don't know how to pronounce this word. It looks like it's pronounced Ghay, Ghay. That's the phonetic spelling. The physical earth, the arena we live in, which operates in space and time, which God uses to prepare us for eternity. It's kind of linked with the Hebrew word, the physical theater in which we are, which is interesting.
So some of that, I mean, that's like a classic example of just the work that happens in biblical interpretation, right? So you go to Greek and you go with, what were the actual Greek words and everything that were written in there. And then you look at how is it translated? And the work of translation is incredible. And there's so much interpretation that happens just to get to your translated Bible. Try to say that to the fundamentalist who says, all you guys are just interpreting, I'm just reading, but, there's all kinds of work that's done to be able to understand, okay, what was being said there versus what would be said going forward. Oh no, I think it's frozen. I think my internet is crapping out, but I'm still recording. So Mark, you're going to hear this afterwards and know that I'm still talking. So you can decide how the heck you want to edit this together. But there's all kinds of examples in the Bible where, the literal understanding or how a phrase would have been translated in the 5th century, in the 15th century, whatever else it was, is different than how translations are translating now to make sense of the world that we live in. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone could make a translation that would talk about to the ends of the cosmos, the way that Eugene Peterson plays with things in The Message and all that kind of thing. So again, that comes back to how literal do things need to be when we're reading, and how do we use these past sources of revelation to relate to today?
Well, it was the best information they had at the time.
Yeah.
A lot of
using the paradigm that he had.
A lot of people don't understand when they read the Bible. If they were to read it in a literal sense, a lot of things wouldn't add up. Don't eat hoofed animals. That was the best science they had then, because they didn't realize you have to cook them at a certain temperature before a lot of the bacteria that's in the meat dies. They just knew that hoofed animals, people were dying, and they didn't understand. So God came down with a commandment. Hey, don't eat. Well, it wasn't God's commandment. It was Moses. Don't eat hoofed meat or hoofed animals and shellfish or whatever, because they didn't understand the science behind how to cook that food. It was the best they had. Science has progressed. We've updated the models. But there's been a lot of things where we haven't updated the model because it goes against certain ideological frameworks. And this is where I had a really hard time for a long time within the church. I didn't realize we were going to talk so much about the church tonight. I'm good with it. Whatever. I guess it all kind of plays into it.
You're talking to a current youth pastor and a former pastor.
Well, and a former youth pastor and former worship leader.
Well, time out. You did say, I want to talk about how finding intelligent life would affect faith.
Yeah. And would affect humanity, the humanity response. I think having this group of people is the perfect group to talk about that, because we're not talking about any science anymore. I mean, the science behind it is all been done, and now humans are responding, and a lot of people are either going to turn to God, turn to a religion, or turn from religion because their religion fell apart, their belief system. I feel like those who don't have a faith system will turn to a faith, and those who have a faith system, and if it's super fundamental, it'll fall apart, and then you have the bulk of the people in the middle that'll just be
life imitates art. So I'm sure there would be almost shot for shot recreation of the Independence Day scene where they're on top of the building. That would probably happen. Life imitates art.
I want to be that guy.
That's you.
Well, you know what?
Mark's
I would
going to leave the strip club early. He's going to clock out early. He's going to do his last private dance and then head to the strip and get a sign. That's going to be Mark.
You know why I would do that? Because that guy, I think it was a girl. Was it a girl?
It was a lady.
She died first. and died so quickly. There was no pain. There was no suffering. And she didn't have to worry about trying to figure out how to rebuild humanity after that. Sign me up. I'm in.
Right. But she missed that incredible monologue on the airplane with
oh gosh. Of the who was the monologue for? Was it the president flying?
The president, who then got in an airplane.
It was good. It was good.
It was a good monologue.
Can we pull it up? I feel like Chase. I feel like you need to read it. Can you read the monologue? This will be the intro to the podcast. I'm gonna put it as the intro
right at the top.
I'm kicking myself that I don't have the actor's name.
It's not a Baldwin.
Bill
is it?
Pullman. Bill Pullman.
Bill
Pullman. I'll pull it up right quick. Yeah, man.
I feel like you need to read it. The monologue from Independence Day, because this is kind of relative. I mean, it's kind of relative to what we're talking about here. Like, now, granted, I don't think the aliens are going to visit U.S. or the Earth, and I don't think they're going to be hostile. But we may find intelligent life, and that's exciting. That's super exciting. My faith will change drastically.
So I'm super curious. Like Mark, you said, you said two things. One, you think that people who don't have a faith might come to faith.
Yeah.
And then number two, you're saying that this would drastically change your faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm super curious. Like how would your faith change?
Oh, I mean, my faith is changing weekly. I hold my faith kind of like, if you look at like representative democracy, you vote in one person and they represent a whole bunch of bills and a whole bunch of things. And you're like, I don't love everything, but I love the main few things. So I'm going to vote that person in, and they represent democracy. Versus a different type of democracy would be called direct democracy, where people would vote individually on individual bills that they I want this exact bill and I don't want this exact bill. It's a lot more work, but you get exactly what you want. And I feel like my faith system now is more like direct democracy versus representative democracy. Like, I don't ascribe to a faith system to where they tell me, we believe this, we believe that, we believe this. And I'm like, I don't really believe that. And then they're like, we believe this. I'm like, probably not. And then they say something, I'm like, oh, well, I believe that. So it's like, I kind of go through each individual structure within the system itself and ascribe to some and not to others. And that changes rapidly. And so if we were to find conclusive evidence of intelligent life beyond Earth, I have no idea how I would respond, because I don't know. I've never been in that situation before, but I'm changing so rapidly now, I can just presume that would happen then too.
So what makes me super curious about that is it sounds like changing how you think for you is the same thing as changing your faith.
Oh yeah, of course. I hold my faith lightly because I might be wrong.
I hold my thoughts lightly.
I
would personally make everything. Well, of course, but for me, I think there's a distinction between like how you think and how you intellectual and take in information versus different kinds of intelligences and even different senses of like what is the center of your being. And I think, so that's where I would say like with how you're describing, like some of this is, I hear you describing this like a scientist, bringing in new information, which leads you to different conclusions.
Absolutely.
Right. And that you have to constantly,
yes,
you have to constantly adjust,
yes,
the information.
I don't have to, I get to.
Well, of course. Right.
And it's like, I take pleasure and pride in that. Like, with new information, my opinion changes, and I'm at this constant flux of new information, constant, and so I'm constantly updating. It's actually a pet peeve of mine. People are like, "Oh, science is always changing its mind." I'm like, "Yes, that's the whole idea."
That's the point.
Like, we found something new, and the old ways don't work anymore. And although, side note, the CDC does not recently fall into the category. They are a bunch of asshats right now. As a scientist, I'm embarrassed for those scientists. Side note, done. Okay, we're going to move on because that is such a point of frustration for me.
Soapbox. Love it.
Yes, but with new information, my opinion changes. And like I held a fundamental belief for so long, like deep fundamental belief, and I was unchanging. And then there came a point where the information was so overwhelming that it was like I had this concrete box around my faith that it was unwavering. It was inflexible. It was immovable. It had no room to grow or die or shift or bend or it wasn't alive. It wasn't this flowing, beautiful, growing thing. It was just like, here's your faith. And it's the mold, and they poured the cement in, and it became this, like, I am never changing. This is, my faith. I'm unwavering. And there came a point where it was so much, it cracked and shattered, and then I had nothing.
Yeah.
And so now I feel like it's like a garden of these like weeds and flowers and trees, and everything is flowing and shifting, and sometimes it's sunny and sometimes it's raining, and new stuff grows up and some stuff gets wiped out. And so like I hold things lightly because I might be wrong.
So in your garden, where are the roots?
Below the plants.
Right.
What's your question?
So you're going to go flowy metaphor, and as soon as I ask a question, you're going to get super literal? Asshole. Jeez.
I don't know. I mean,
because I would use a vegetation analogy as well in almost the same way that like things grow and move and things come about, and the Bible uses these metaphors of like the wind comes and it sweeps away the whatever, but what is it that endures? And to talk about like what's the grounding and what are the roots, and so this is where I personally I think there's a little bit of a distinction for me that I make from what I consider how I think, even what I believe versus faith. And I don't say that from an anti-intellectual standpoint of like I won't let information impact my faith. But it's these are different kinds of, I think we're doing oil and water, we're doing apples and oranges here.
Sure.
And so this is why I can say, something like, oh, this would be fascinating and I'd love to talk about it. And I think it would have some really interesting implications, but how does it impact my faith? I don't think it would change a whole lot at all, personally.
I don't know if I have any roots. Go ahead, Chase. Go ahead.
I think the things that would change, Tommy, you don't consider faith, but Mark's definition of faith is, I don't know. I feel like you guys are saying it's oil and water, but I feel like it's way more close than you guys
I think it is.
Because I totally, is it Tom or Tommy? Because
I go by Tom.
Okay,
he
Tom,
calls
sorry.
me.
I call him
Instagram
Tommy.
handle that's Tommy Fife. So
Tommy
whatever.
Fife?
That's where, okay.
You're good. You're good.
Because like everything Tommy's saying, I'm like, yeah. Everything Mark's saying, I'm like, well, yeah. I'm thankfully I don't believe the same thing I did when I was 13. So where is that ground? And I'm having a hard time communicating it because it is this unknown, weird place.
We're getting into the land of the mystics, 100%. You're getting into this stuff that's super hard to articulate.
Though. I think it's incredibly important to articulate and to have a space for and to have these conversations. So I'm doing this on an iPad. So on the left, I see Mark explaining, hey, like,
because he's a liberal, he's on the left,
no, just like the picture here that I'm watching and listening is so,
it's a bird.
Is so perfect that I'm hearing this. And Mark, I would say your roots are incredibly faithful, not so much like words. This is a terrible time to not have words in an audio medium. But
no, that's it, dude. I love the authenticity here because we're kind of going into a realm here that is kind of it lives beyond words. Like we are talking about things that normally we don't put to words, which is why we use these incredible metaphors like gardens and roots and rain and stuff that we know, but that's not the thing.
Of course. This is what theologians call the difference between the cataphatic and the apophatic traditions. The cataphatic can use language to describe these realities, and the apophatic is the language cannot capture this, and our metaphors fall flat.
And scientists would call this experience qualia, which is the human experience. Like if you were to see a sunset, I could explain the diffraction of light and why it turns purple and red, but you can't explain why you feel something deep inside of you. And the color green, describe the color green. That's qualia. It's the human experience behind it. So that's
we need the poets. We need the poets for those things, right?
Yeah. So we're treading in ground that we have to use words that aren't the thing to describe the thing.
Well, can we agree that it's sacred ground?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think this is sacred ground. I really do. And
Holy mystery kind of thing?
I don't know. Maybe. I just know that whatever lives here is super important. For people, Mark, who are, I don't want to say non-committal because that's such a negative connotation. For people who are like, I can't wait to learn and to expand my worldview and my faith and what this looks like. And for Tom, for you to say, well, man, I can't wait to receive this information and then see how that affects my faith. It's incredibly sacred. And I think it's beautiful. I love it. And I think how not only individuals handle this space, but how families handle this space, how communities of friends handle this space, how communities of faith handle this space is going to either start or stop wars, is either going to start or stop benevolence or charity or that grand love that communicates all humanity or being or realms or space and time. Like that's where that love is going to come from, is this space.
Just the music.
It was so good, Chase. Keep going. It's so good.
Well, I'm just going to read the Independence Day monologue now.
Do it.
Well, I don't know where you want to put things. The one thing I wanted to say to Chase, what you were adding there, just to add a piece and then tie a few things you said, right? Like some of this is the difference that I hold between faith and belief. I think belief is often like those are the things that you believe. Those are the things of intellectual assent. And Mark, you've already quoted the great Richie Rohr. So I'm going to bring in another one to talk about how, he makes the point that whenever we see the word faith in the Bible for the next 20 years, we should remove the word faith and immediately replace it with the word trust. Because faith has gotten so associated with belief, with intellectual assent, with ideas, largely because of a faith tradition that was like, you have to believe these things in order to be saved. So we valued the mind, enlightenment, modern mindset, all that jazz. So he says, we're so tied up in that, we have to get rid of the word faith for the next 20 years and replace it with the word trust. And that when the Bible is talking about, or when this faith tradition is talking about faith, like what I'm getting at is the trust piece. And to your point, Chase, that's going to be something different for families, for kids, for faith communities, whatever else. And I think it will take leadership to be able to bring forward, like, what is it that we are going to trust in? For a kid now grappling with a world that might have intelligent life, that, at that level of consciousness, it's as simple as you are safe, you are loved, and you are good. And that is what you can trust. And then all the information can come and go, but you are safe, you are loved, you are good. I think as people get older, the things that you trust in are the goodness of God. Again, it's what do we do with this revelation? And if we say God is good, if we say God has made things out of a sense of beauty as a creator, if it's we are meant to be stewards of creation, God put Adam in charge of the garden to lead to the garden's flourishing. And that is our role, not dominion, not, doctrine of discovery, all the bullshit that we've done with creation for so long. But that is what we ultimately trust in, the goodness of God and our role in participating in that. Those are the kinds of things that I'm sorry, the science is not touching those for me. So when you ask me the question, does this change your faith? No. Because my faith is grounded in these things, not because my faith is anti-intellectualist, but because what that information does is it might change things that I believe about the world, but it does not change where I stake my tent pole. Where is my trust? So that's the distinction I'm trying to make. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The discovery of intelligent life will shatter worldviews and perspectives and everything as it should. And it would create some incredible conversations within the faith. You just said not to use the word faith, but within the religious community as well. Not only with our faith, but every other religion, it would have conversations very differently than Christianity.
Well, have you guys seen the movie on Netflix right now? It's called Don't Look Up.
No, we don't have Netflix, Mark. I'm sorry,
dude. You want my account? I'll give it to you right now. Yeah, so the login is MARKJA. Everyone's going to log in.
Got our daughter a Netflix gift card for Christmas. We haven't done it yet. We have no. I want to watch it. We have Hulu and.
Next time you get a chance, there's a movie called Don't Look Up, and it's actually the movie is it's brilliant. It's Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence. Meryl Streep is the president, and
among 8,000 other actors and actresses that you're just
it's an incredible
Adam
lineup.
McKay,
it's incredible lineup, and the movie's really funny. But there's an asteroid coming and hitting Earth, and they kind of hit on the political structure in the system, and they use bad news in order to promote political agendas and then to get re-nominated in the campaign. And the whole idea of the movie Don't Look Up is there comes a point where you can see the asteroid. I believe it's a comet actually in the movie. The comet is coming to hit Earth and you can see it. You can physically see it from Earth. And the whole one side of the political party, their whole kind of chant was "Don't look up," and it's a play on other.
Oh.
And so they're like, yeah, if you don't look up, then it's not real. It was a play on the political structure and system in America and the climate of the political system currently. It's brilliant, and I won't give away what happens. Because the movie is it got mixed reviews because I would say one of the political sides gets hammered more than the other in the movie, and so probably a lot of people didn't like that. And you have to take it tongue in cheek. It's funny. Enjoy the movie. Who cares where you stand politically?
Jonah Hill's in it, kind of steals a couple scenes.
So
I've just heard it's
good. It's so good.
Oh man. I can't wait to watch.
Yeah, I mean, but not only that, their science is really good. And on top of that, Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence, Leonardo DiCaprio is a professor and Jennifer Lawrence is a PhD student at Michigan State University in the movie, and that's my school.
Nice.
Go green, go white. Oh,
go white.
So good. Woo.
Good
so I started watching.
You are so pumped right now.
Oh, I was so stoked for that. I mean, what are the chances it would be that? I mean, because Michigan State University doesn't have a huge astronomy program. It's pretty good. It's okay. They have an observatory, but it's real small. So the fact that they were doing it for MSU, I was like,
Wonder how Adam McKay, what the whole point, did he know someone that went there, or did he just go and like the area? I wonder, what.
None of it was
Even
shot
The
in
Big
Lansing.
Short.
None of it was shot in East Lansing or in Michigan. None of it. Yeah.
That's not a good place to shoot any movie.
Well,
at all.
I mean, Michigan State campus is beautiful, gorgeous, but like there was a couple of times where Leonardo DiCaprio was like, "Yeah, I'm in Lansing, Michigan," and I'm looking at the scene. I'm like, "No, you're not, bro. You're in Connecticut."
Mark, do you live in Lansing now?
On the south side, yeah.
Okay.
I live in Holt.
Tom, where you at?
Grand Rapids.
Okay.
Yeah, we're both Michiganders.
And are you still in North Carolina?
I'm in Columbus. No, so we were in North Carolina for 5 years. We moved to Chicago
You said that.
for 3 years, and then we've been here since 2017.
Okay.
In Columbus, Ohio. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and you're a Browns fan, right?
I love the Cleveland Browns. Yes.
He's been a Browns fan since I've known him, and
Yeah,
made fun of him from day one.
That's okay. Hey,
He goes, I'm
get
a
it.
Bears fan, so I can lay it on you, man.
Yeah.
yeah. No, I do enjoy sports. Yeah, I like sports.
Well,
I do enjoy sports.
Well,
sports are
you're-
great.
Well, football, basketball, baseball.
your podcast is Orange is the new Oranger.
So, in 2018, I started a Browns podcast, the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast. I'm no longer hosting that show. I gave up hosting duties, which was a whole lesson in surrender and
you
like,
guys
giving up
had some
things that you love.
people on that.
No,
podcast.
yeah. We've had former coaches, we've had former GMs, former
That's
players, we've had national pundits. Terrell Owens was on our podcast, which was insane.
Wow.
So yeah, we've been able to pull some guests, which has been cool. Also host a basketball podcast for the Cavs, and we have about 17, 18 shows on my podcast network. 10 or 12 of them are sports related. We have
Holy
a handful
cats. That's awesome.
in the entertainment vertical. We have some like culture vertical and like a health and wellness vertical as well. So
Nice.
but no, yeah. So when I say I like sports, I talk about them all the time.
Yeah.
See, and I'm over here like I host a podcast, and I think like 16 people listen to it every week, which is
stop it.
dope. What?
Dude, yeah, man. Well, any podcast that the average life is 7 episodes. So any podcast that is over 7 episodes.
Are you
and then I just love when
serious?
people yeah, that's the
I
average.
didn't know that, dude. I've been doing this.
Yeah.
This is year 4. Yeah.
Well, and then anyone who actually has like a dream and like wants to do a podcast and they do it, I love it anyway. Like just you have this idea
Just do
to
it.
actually conceptualize it and make it happen is a whole feat. So props to both of you for keeping it going, and then to keep it going past the 7 is just like a huge thing anyway.
Yeah,
So-
man. But my goal is to be the slightly left-leaning Joe Rogan #2 podcast in the world. That's my. I love Joe Rogan. A lot of people shit on Joe Rogan. Let me just speak on this real quick. Joe Rogan has conversations that nobody's having, and yes, his ideals might be a little misogynistic, and he might be a little resolute in some ideas. And I get that.
Good way to put
He's
it.
allowed to have those. But, dude, he is having conversations no one's having, and he's willing to have them, and he asks good questions, and he's arguably the best host in the world.
does a good job
It's
at
incredible.
what he does.
Incredible.
Does-
and it's
and he's
funny.
gotten paid a lot of money to do what he
Crazy
does.
money. Crazy money doing podcasts. Like I love listening to him. He has some conspiracy theorists. He had like Oliver Stone on, which is so cool. He had Jewel Kilcher on, which was probably the most ridiculous episode I've ever listened to. He had like Peter McCullough and Sanjay Gupta on there, and both those episodes I was like, yeah, y'all are a bunch of right and left wing news, blah blah, don't care. And then he had like Robert Malone, and that was super interesting. Go listen to that episode. So good. That's all I'm going to talk about, Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he's only on Spotify. True story, I've never listened to a second of Joe Rogan. So I take your word, and I understand that he has really important
He's the best.
conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it's #1 podcast in the world, but there's a reason for it. Like, he is the best host. So I listen to him because I want to become a better podcaster. So like I listen to what he does, how he hosts, the questions he asks, and so like and then I go back and listen to myself and I cringe and I'm like, God, I'm terrible. And so like I'm getting better every episode. And then I listen to people like you, Chase, and I'm like, okay, how are you a host? How are you talking? And I'm trying to become better. And then I look at Tommy and I'm just like, I want to grow my hair out, but also how articulate Tommy is with his words. I'm so jealous of that.
Very impressive. Yeah, man. You're being able to communicate your brain words to your mouth words very well.
Yeah, the fidelity between your brain and your mouth is so tight, man. And mine is loosey goosey. I need to tighten that up.
It sometimes it takes me a while to get there. Like, I come from a family of like my dad and my sister are both 5s on the Enneagram. I don't know if Chase, you do the Enneagram stuff, but
I've done it once just to know. I couldn't tell you what it was.
It's fine.
Maybe a 3.
No.
I don't know.
That's not the important piece here. The important piece is like they are the people who are quiet, and then when they speak. When they speak, you listen because they've been thinking this whole time and they've distilled it down to what you actually need to hear. And then I'm like, hey, just give me an hour and I will get there. I promise you.
And
I'll just be good.
I'll just say it. There. I'll say it really loud and I'll say it once and that's it. And I mean that's really it. Dude, do you want to read that? Monologue?
We'll leave you guys with this, and every word I'm going to read is original thought from my brain right now. And so I'm off the cuff here. I'm trying to be like Tommy here. So this is what I have to say to everybody. Good morning. In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world. And you'll be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind. Mankind. That word should have a new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore. We will be united in our common interests. Perhaps it's fate that today is the 4th of July. And you will once again be fighting for our freedom, not from tyranny, oppression or persecution, but from annihilation. We're fighting for a right to live, to exist. And should we win the day, the 4th of July will no longer be known as an American holiday, but as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
Awesome.
It's so good. Now I want to go watch that movie.
It's very good.
Oh, dude. Chase, thanks for coming on, man. This conversation was all over, but honestly, I think it's exactly what it needed to be. And I'm really thankful for you coming on, my friend.
It's good stuff.
I love you. Thank you for the invite. Tommy, it's a pleasure to meet you. It's Tommy, man. I'm sorry. I know it's Tom, but...
You know what? It's good. I can take it. I like
it.
Great to meet you, man.
Tommy, dude.
Yeah, nice to meet you, too.
Thanks so much, brother.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Cool. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, everybody.